Welcome to everybody to webinar Ready Set Roman training series webinar number 11. My name is Ori Fox. I am the Space Telescope, the SOC, the Science Operations Center Deputy Project Scientist for Roman. And today we're going to, in our sort of home stretch here, going into the Cycle 1 deadline, we're going to go over some questions that have been cropping up in the help desk, and also leave some time for sort of office hours at the end for any questions that you might have. If you have questions during this presentation, you can write them in the chat. We have a couple subject matter experts online that might be able to provide a response. Otherwise, we'll try to address them at the end. If you really have something that you want to interrupt for, that's fine. Raise your hand. And if somebody can monitor the hands, we can always unmute you. There's only 17 people, so we can keep this a little bit informal. Actually, I want to show this slide before we get to late breaking news. I just want to remind you all, if you're new to the Ready Set Roman training series, this is number 11. We have had 10 already on a range of topics that we think the community would find useful as they start writing their Cycle 1 proposals. A couple examples are here. I don't have the slide of webinars 1 through 6, but you can find all the information here at our webpage. We have recordings and PowerPoint documents uploaded for all the previous presentations. We also have a YouTube channel with all the recordings that you can subscribe to, that you're always up to date. And we still do have one more session next Tuesday at 1 o'clock for any remaining questions that might come up. So before we move on, I do want to go back to late breaking news. I'm going to turn this over to my colleague Vivian Yu over at IPAC. Vivian.
All right. Thanks, Sorry. Hi, everyone. I'm Vivian Yu. I'm the Roman Proposal Lead based at IPAC SSC. And so I wanted to make sure I bring your attention to looking at the late breaking news page on our docs that is under the call for proposal. You can access it on the left sidebar there under the call for proposal. And this is really important information that has, captured some of the ever evolving kind of information that we want to distribute to the community. And so in particular, as of a few weeks ago, we have updated the data products website resources for you all from the PITS team, from the project infrastructure teams, and all the also the Whitefield Science teams that you might find useful, because you can now refer to data products from those teams in your proposals in a dual anonymous way. And then also, there's examples from the on the Roman Research Nexus, if you wanted to know how to ask for resources for RRN in your credits in your proposal. We also have a page that points to kind of the FAQs and knowledge base, which we'll go over some of them in this session. But, if you want to access that knowledge base, along with the help desk, there's a link to it. And also, like earlier entries included links to the new versions of APT, ETCI, SIM as they were useful, and also, more information about parallel observation. So please do check this website often, and to make sure if you have any questions, please do ask through the help desk. Ori?
Okay, great. All right, so today we're going to spend some time going over the following 8 questions, and like I said, at the end we'll have some time for you to ask your own questions. The first 6 of these have been curated by Melissa Shabande, who's online. She's a Space Telescope Fellow working on Roman. She curated these from the help desk, sort of selecting some of the reoccurring questions that we thought would be useful to answer today. And so I'll go through those, and then the final 2, I'm going to turn it over to Vivian. Those are specific to the call for proposals itself. And so she'll address those questions. Okay. So, um, number one, how do I estimate the Roman research nexus credits realistically for a proposal? And actually, it made me realize I'm only sharing my PowerPoint. So let me actually back out for 1 second and also share. I think I can share my whole window. Nothing I'm worried about, but I just want to be professional here. Give me 1 second. It's gonna minimize everything. Okay. Okay, you should be able to see my screen. And the first question was, how do I estimate Roman Research Nexus credits realistically for a proposal? You may have noticed that in the proposal itself, it asks you to estimate what your resource usage is going to be if you require the Nexus. A lot of people have asked, well, how do I know how much, uh, how many credits a certain action takes? And so there is a new page as of a couple weeks ago in the Roman documentation that actually walks you through a number of different estimates and benchmarks for specific use cases. And so we will circulate these slides at the end of the presentation, so you'll have all the links. But right here, you can see as we go through the page that there are a number of different examples that walk you through different procedures that we think a typical user might have. This includes things like running the pipeline, generating simulations, doing analysis, photometry, or galaxy shape measurements, running the ETC via Pangaea, or cross-matching catalogs. And then you can see down below the number of CPU hours per action and the subsequent server size that would be associated with that particular action. And so this is created to help inform you when you're filling out that part of your proposal in terms of how many research Nexus credits you'll likely need. This also gives you a sense of how to interpret those benchmarks as well. And if all of this is catching you completely by surprise, and you haven't even heard of the Roman Research Nexus, we do have a webinar on that as well. The Nexus is an online platform, bring user to the data, right? We're going to have petabytes and petabytes of data, so it's not strategic to want to download all that data. This online cloud platform is a pre-compiled environment. It has a lot of the software that you'll likely need. You also have the ability to install your own software, and you can work directly with the data without having to download any of it. Of course, none of that's completely free, but everybody does have a free account with a certain number of credits allocated to them, whether or not you win a proposal. Winning a proposal, however, allocates you more credits to do the analysis that you need for that proposal. So if you haven't already done so, you can also read our documentation on the Nexus. I just wanted to bring that up as well. And you can even go and log in. 1 second. As this, let's see. Well, this is why you don't do a lot. There we go. You can launch your own Nexus server. It's all free. All you need is a MyST account. if you don't, I'm already logged in. If you don't have a MyST account, it will give you instructions about how to create one. And then you can just go and you can launch your own server. Okay. So that gives you a little bit of a sense of how to estimate your Nexus credits. Maybe we can pause there if anyone has a specific question related to this topic. Okay, we will move on. The next question. Is there a downloadable Roman survey footprint I can query by RA and DEC that will and so that I can figure out will my specific target be observed by one of the community defined surveys? A little bit of context to this question. Um, if you're new to Roman, I see some new names online, which is why I'm giving a little bit of additional context. 75% of the nominal 5-year mission is already predefined by what we're calling community defined surveys. We have a lot of documentation online about what these surveys are. We also have a webinar that outlines how everything you need to know about these surveys and how you can learn, delve into the details with all of our online documentations and tools. And so the Cycle 1 call for proposals uh, um, provides funding for analysis of data in these surveys. And so a lot of people who are thinking about how to use data that will already be obtained by one of these surveys, instead of collecting new data, they're wondering, will my favorite sources be observed in the first 1 to 2 years? And so that's a great question. And so we do have a footprint tool that allows you to visualize and explore the footprints for the core community, for all of the community defined surveys. And that tool is available on the Roman Research Nexus. If we have a little time, I'll log in and we can even go around and explore the Nexus. But like I said, we've had previous webinars where we've already done that. The Nexus has a series of Jupyter notebooks and workflows that provide detailed instructions on how to do a lot of different analysis. And one of the things is running this Roman survey footprint tool. This question has come up so much that one thing that the Roman branch did here at the Institute was create a knowledge base article. A knowledge base article is a specific answer to questions that are received through the help desk that maybe don't rise to the point where a whole article needs to get written inside of the Roman documentation, or maybe we need a quick response to the community. And there's a whole series of questions within the knowledge base. You can think of them as FAQs. And so if you go to this link, you'll see that there are detailed instructions about how to run this tool, which basically provides a polygon with boundaries that you're able to plot in, matplotlib, and you're able to explore that footprint um, in Python in your Jupyter notebook with all of your favorite tools, and you can enter your favorite coordinates or your favorite objects and see whether they or not they are covered by this particular footprint. So all those instructions are right here, and you can follow them at your own pace. All right. Does anyone have anything to add from the Roman Telescope branch, or are there anybody that has specific questions or follow-up related to this topic? All right, we will move on to the next one. The next question, do proposals need to include a detailed dithering strategy, and which dither pattern combinations are recommended or discouraged? And I think the answer here is that it depends on your science case. When in the call for proposals, there is a request for technical justifications, technical details, in that you do want to, just like any proposal, justify your setup if in terms of why you chose specific filters or integration times. And if dithering is an important part of your strategy, you should definitely justify the dithering options that you chose. If you're unfamiliar with the different dithering patterns, we do have more documentation on that as well. So here's the link. There's a whole page on dithering with all the different patterns. Um, it's worth pointing out that there's sort of two ways to think about the different dithering strategies. There is something that we call both gap filling, and then there's also subpixel dithering. Gap filling is essentially to fill the gaps between all the different detectors. So you have one nice cohesive mosaic. And then when it comes to subpixel dithering, that optimizes your PSF sampling. And so subpixel dithering doesn't necessarily fill the gaps. And so since Roman is a survey instrument, you're probably going to want to do both. So how do you actually create an APT file with both strategies in place? Well, there is a knowledge base article about that as well, because that question does come up over and over again. So I'm just going to give you the resource for that. And so here you go. This explains how to have simultaneous use of both the gap filling and subpixel dithers inside of APT. Already 92 views. Okay. All right. Anybody want to add anything to that question or have anything follow up that they want to ask? All right. So let's move on. Um, okay. So another question that keeps coming up is that people are trying to figure out how much of a survey will be completed within the first 2 years, because the high latitude wide area survey is thousands of square degrees. And depending on what your science case is, you might be curious about how much of the wide area survey will actually be completed in those first 2 years. I keep saying the first 2 years to give that more context, because the call for proposals are specific for funding for analysis or new observations that can be completed in those first 2 years. So the answer to this question is that the schedule, although it's very mature at this point, is still under discussion. And that depends on a number of different things that still have to happen between now and the time that the surveys get executed. Um, the issue at the end here is that the wide area survey, medium and wide tiers, do not have particularly strong timing or cadence constraints compared to other core community surveys. And furthermore, we don't even know which other observations through the GAS, the General Astrophysics surveys, will be selected in cycle one, as well as, don't forget, this is all WFI wide field imager specific. We also have the coronagraph observations that we need to consider. So the final schedule still won't be known until after the cycle one proposals are selected. And it won't be until that point that we know specifically what fraction of the high latitude wide area survey wide tier and medium tiers will actually be observed in those first 2 years. However, if you want an estimate, we do have a good guess, and a lot of that is described here. So again, we have a Roman documentation page on that. Did that work? It should have worked. If it didn't, then we can go here. And there's a page specific to the first 2 years of science operations. And it should give you an idea of at least some idea about what fraction of events observations will actually get executed. You can see that for the medium and wide tier, it still only says partial observations. So that doesn't answer that specific question. And so beyond what's documented there, our official answer is that the current plan for the medium tier is to prioritize imaging in the F158 filter early in the mission in order to optimize the processing and delivery of the spectroscopic products associated with that. And then while the timeline for the completion of the deep and the ultra deep tiers are relatively well defined, the execution of the observations for specific regions within the medium and wide tiers, as well as the total area coverage, depend on all of these final considerations that we discussed. So if you'd like to talk about possible strategies in terms of writing your proposal, I can certainly give you my personal take, but it is not an official Space Telescope or IPAC answer. So I don't want to mislead you down that road. Maybe after the presentation, when we have a little bit more of an informal discussion, if that's a question you want to ask, I'm happy to entertain it and give you my personal approach. Okay, so does anyone have anything they want to add to that question or anything specific that you want to ask regarding this topic? Excuse me for my cough. I'm getting over a bit of a sickness. Okay, let's move on. So now we're going to move on to the next question, which is what data products will the project deliver and when? So there's also a lot of documentation about this topic as well. It's quite complex because the delivery of data products and data releases are spread out amongst the Space Telescope Science Institute, the Science Support Center, the SSC at IPAC, as well as community contributions from a number of different funded science teams, including these PITs, the project infrastructure teams, and the WFS teams, the wide field science teams, that were funded by NASA through the ROSES call for proposals in previous cycles, going back a couple years now. And I guess the way to think about it, before I get into the details of the documentation, is that you should have a large number of fully processed data that, as well as resulting products and catalogs, whether it's photometry or light curves or spectra, that should enable most of the science that you will want to do. That science is not, that doesn't necessarily mean you won't have to do any work, but you should consider this while writing your proposals so that you don't think you have to rerun entire pipelines to get your data done. Because again, when you're talking about petabytes and petabytes of data, you're not going to be wanting to rerun this entire pipeline. So it's important that while you're writing these proposals, you're aware of the products that will be at your disposal. So there's a summary article that I'm partial to because I wrote it, that came out 2 weeks ago. This is a very high level overview that discusses sort of the detailed differences between all the things I just brought up. We have something called prompt products that will be available immediately. One thing I should point out is that there's no proprietary period. So you all have access to the data as soon as it's downlinked and processed within a couple days. And so there's these prompt products that will be generated. And then at the end of an observing campaign for a specific survey, all the data will be reprocessed with a single pipeline version, calibration version, reference file set, so forth and so on, so that you have a nice uniform combined stacked data release that will really enable some of the most cutting edge science that Roman is designed for. But if that doesn't stop you from using the prompt products as soon as they come off the telescope. And so the definition of all those different products are described a bit more in detail in the Roman documentation. This describes all the different levels of data going from level 1 to 2 to 3 to 4. Essentially, level 1 are the ramps. These are taken as infrared detectors up the ramp. Level 2 is the rate files um, for a single pointing. The level 3 are the stacked mosaics. And then level 4 are the catalog and data products associated with the level 3 files. Level 5 are the community contributed products from the PITS and WFS teams. The responsibilities for the wide field imager are sort of split between the Space Telescope and IPAC. IPAC, it's easier to say what IPAC's focused on because that's a little bit more concrete, which is specifically all spectroscopy, as well as the data products associated with the galactic bulge time domain survey, including things like microlensing event light curves and things like that. And the Space Telescope Science Institute is responsible for a lot of the other level 3 and level 4 products that are associated with the wide area survey imaging and also the time domain survey imaging. And so a lot of that can be described here. If you're looking for something specific that you can't find, of course, you can always ask the help desk. Um, but a lot of the details about what's in those different data products are described here. The specific details about what will be in the catalogs when they come out are not actually described. Those are close to being finalized, but I don't think we have that fully documented yet. Somebody online can correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think that's publicly available. But you can assume that the photometry catalogs will include all the typical things that you get in a photometry catalog. Um, so, maybe I'll stop at that point. At the same time, the community is contributing a lot of products and software that will enable a whole range of different science. And those have been compiled and made publicly available on NASA's webpage. If you scroll down under PIT and WFS data products, you can find their PDFs. And this outlines a lot of the specifics in terms of what the PITs and the WFS teams will provide. So I encourage you, as you're writing your proposal, to go through this so that you're not reinventing the wheel and really take advantage about some of the things that are already in the works. All right, I saw a bunch of questions come up. So maybe I'll look at those and see if there's anything specific. In the meantime, does anyone else want to raise their hand or add to this conversation? Let me see here.
Ari, I can take the questions from Julie if you like. I was
Yeah,
actually in the
that's
middle of
great.
typing, but I typed too slowly.
No, that's
um,
fine.
Okay, yeah, so Julia, sorry, I was a bit in the middle of typing the answer to you. But to answer your first question, yeah, so the example is based on, if the proposing team, has a program to which you're referring to in their own proposal, but obviously in cycle one, right now we don't have assigned PIDs currently expect for the core community surveys and the galactic plane survey. So for these, you can just refer to these by their current project names, all the acronyms that's given. But in the future, yeah, program IDs can be found in the data headers or on the archive. And as to your second question, I would say it's optional that you provide, work plan for co-Is who are not seeking funding. In my personal capacity, I would say that mentioning that kind of work could potentially strengthen the proposal, but I would say it's not, required or anything. I hope that answers your question, but please let me know if that did not. Great. Thanks, Julie.
All right. Was it just that one or is there another one?
I think there was another question about reduced or maybe flux calibrated spectra availability. Or you want to take that one?
Um, I don't know. The Spectra is more on the SSC side. I don't know. First of all, I can't find my questions.
Oh.
When I'm sharing my screen, my chat always goes away. But I don't know. I think I saw Patrick online before. Is he still online? Not sure.
Um, if
Can you
not, we
read
can
it?
mark it down and we can,
Can you read
yeah,
it out
so the,
loud? Maybe I can answer it.
yeah, so the question is, does this mean we will have reduced and maybe flux calibrated spectra within days of the observation?
Ah, yes. Okay. So we need Patrick here to answer that question. Here's what I think let me see. Charles, do you know the answer to that question? Let me see. I have a guess. Before I tell you, let me just see something. I think the answer is going to be no. I don't think. Sorry, I'm just going to my cheat sheet here. Um, yeah. So I think if I were to answer your question, somebody can correct me if they know better. Otherwise, we'll get back to you on that.
I think Patrick mentioned he might be he just got dropped off a second. He'll try to log back in if we want to
Oh,
hold off
great.
on it.
Yes, Patrick will give you the. Let me see if I get it right though. I think what you'll have are potentially um
Oh,
prompts.
Patrick's here.
Okay, Patrick can answer it. I don't want to put my foot in my mouth. Hey, Pat.
Patrick, yeah.
How you doing? I will save you from putting your foot in your mouth, Ori.
Thank you. Yeah, Vivian, do you want to ask the question?
Yeah, the question was, does it mean we will have reduced or maybe flux calibrated spectra within days of the observation?
I'm sorry. Repeat the question again. I'm sorry.
Does this mean we will have reduced and maybe flux calibrated spectra within days of the observation?
No, not within date. Not for the spectra. The spectra, we have a requirement to produce spectra within 21 days of the actual observation. So once the last observation, once the last L2 file comes over from Space Telescope, then we have 21 days to basically produce the spectra and get it back. There's a lot of work that has to go into extracting the spectra and flux calibrating it and making sure that all of the work is done.
So Patrick, is it fair to I want to clarify that for myself.
Sure.
So we send you, let's say we have a prompt product
Yep.
from an L2 spectrum, and you will be able to make a prompt 1D extracted flux calibrated spectrum from that. But let's say that's just one pass, for example, of the wide area survey.
Good point.
When you come back and do the second pass, you'll have a much better 1D spectrum for the data release that may look very different than that prompt product. Is that a fair
That's a fair
statement?
assumption. Yeah, exactly. Because every extra roll that we get adds to the ability to extract the Grism spectra. And so the first, we're trying to get it out with only one roll, but that's actually going to be, a lot. It'll be a higher quality once we get 2 rolls, then 3 rolls, and then the 4th roll as the high latitude wide area survey is designed. So.
And then it's also worth pointing out that I said all spectra, but that's also a little bit misleading because while that is true, the IPAC spectroscopic pipeline is more, I guess, optimized for galaxies. And the supernova pit is designing a spectroscopic extraction that is optimized for supernovae that are on top of galaxies. And they will be providing their own spectroscopic database for supernovae. So I don't know who actually asked that question, if they're more interested in supernovae or galaxies, but that's worth pointing out. And that the pits outline their plan for
Mhm.
releasing spectra in that document.
That's correct. And I will say the second point, the first one you said, it's more it is very well tuned to the to spectra for galaxies, it will do stellar spectra.
Yes.
It's just that for the supernovas, you need to be able to subtract the galaxy from underneath. So you need to have a priori observations of those galaxies, and so that'll be a little bit different. And the supernova pit is the one who is producing a lot of those, or working on that infrastructure.
Yes. Thanks for clarifying that. Stars too, of course.
Thanks.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, Wei Long has a question. Okay, I found my chat. Can we assume, at least within the wide area survey, deep tier spectroscopy data that are going to be delivered by the end of the 2 years are 1D and 2D calibrated spectra? Does that include matched source catalog with imaging? I believe the answer is yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
That should be the answer. Yes.
Yeah.
That's correct.
All right. And then my final question before I turn it over to Vivian is that some people have had experience on the Nexus where the Nexus sort of times out. And they've asked, why does it do that? And how do I recover my work? And this has to do with the way cloud computing works. Every time that you're logged in, even if you're not running your notebook or running your code, you are using a small amount of credits. And so if you, but at the same time, you're able um, to close your machine or close your computer and still have and log out even and still have your account running in the background. So logging out's not always sufficient. This is an important point. We talk about this in our Nexus webinar. You actually have to stop your server. And that's on purpose, that's intentional because people might want to log out and let something run in the background, right? But if you did it by accident and you just left things on and nothing's running, you will still be using resources. So to conserve compute resources, the servers are shut down automatically after 1 hour of inactivity. It will notice if you're running code, so you don't have to worry about that. But that means that if you had a notebook open or a piece of code open that wasn't saved, I'm not talking about files that were written, but if you have something that wasn't saved, that work will be lost. Okay, so that's explicitly said here. Stopping a server does not affect files stored in your home directory or team directories. Any unsaved work in your notebooks or terminals will be lost. So if you plan to step away for an extended period of time, just save your work. And there's also this question about how do you modify pre-written notebooks? And there's a way to do that that's worth adding here. You're able to make a copy of any pre-written notebook in your home directory, as opposed to the notebook directory that everybody has upon login. And then you can edit it and save it at will. So that's just another little tidbit to add. And so that should really cover it. All right. So anything anyone wants to add before I turn it over to Vivian or any other additional questions? All right, Vivian, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Sounds good. And I'm just going to cover a couple here that we've received through help desk under proposals, but obviously any questions from the audience, feel free to bring it up as they come up. So there have been a lot of questions about observations, especially like long-term monitoring. And here, there are actually different flavors of questions that came in through this topic. So I kind of picked one here, but if this doesn't answer your question, please let me know. So the question one of the questions that's been asked is it allowed to actually request observing time? For instance, in the case of long-term monitoring that may extend beyond the first 2 years of the mission. And if so, will that total approved time be counted toward the 1,200 available hours that were stated as being available within the cycle 1 call? So while the cycle 1 solicitation states that up to 6 observing programs and up to 1,200 hours will be approved, if a proposal may request multi-epoch observations that go beyond the nominal duration of cycle 1, given a very compelling science justification. But the approved time will be counted toward the 1,200 hours available in cycle 1, rather than some kind of future mortgaging of future time. So this is just a just to hopefully clarify this policy that we have for you all. Any questions on that before we move on to the next and last question? Not seeing any already, so maybe we'll move on to the next one. Okay, and then so there had also been a number of help desk questions that came in wanting to clarify the budget part of the proposal. Specifically, you know, will there be a second phase for approved programs in which detailed budgets and institutional endorsements will be requested, since we're not asking for those in, you know, with your proposal submission? And so the way that we're running this is that the Roman proposal process does not solicit detailed budgets or institution endorsements. So as proposers, you're selecting a proposal category, small, medium, large, that should be commensurate with the expected level of effort that corresponds to the funding levels listed in the call. And the specific amounts in the funding awards will be determined through formulaic means and will be based on the final availability of NASA funds in the selected proposal category and the total number of approved programs, complexity of the data to be analyzed, and other relevant factors. So, but otherwise, you know, you will not be asked to submit, you know, the institutional budgets or get institutional endorsement like you might for ADAP or some other ROSE's proposals. I hope that answers the question, but there may be other ones surrounding budgets or anything that creeps up, and feel free to raise them now if you like. And I guess while folks may be thinking, maybe typing, you know, I guess this is probably the time to open up the floor for questions for, you know, either myself or for Ori, for folks at both SSC and SOC, if you have anything that you might want cleared up for the proposals. And if not, Ori, I'm gonna let you be in charge so we can stare at each other for a couple minutes here.
Yeah. Well, we can end it early. We have a few minutes. I assume many of you joined because you're writing proposals. Is there anything that you have found challenging or unclear? Maybe that'll help break the ice if there's a brave volunteer.
Ori, there's
Oh,
Julie has a note for
yeah.
you.
Okay, so Julie asked about how to deal with partial observation. So I want to make this very clear. This is being recorded. I'm on record. This is my personal opinion, but it would be good to see if anybody else has their own strategy. I'm actually not working in the the wide area survey for my proposal, but I would think about two different things. One is to be able to write sort of a flexible or generic proposal that doesn't rely, you know, one of the strengths of Roman that I personally think will play well to the TAC is not having to worry about specific galaxies, right? Unlike JWST or Hubble, we're not, you know, you don't need to have your gold sample of 10 galaxies that are just like the be all end all. You now have millions of galaxies. And so you really want to be working in statistical space or with big samples where individual galaxies don't necessarily matter. Obviously, that's not always going to be true because there are definitely some really great experimental, you know, galaxies that create great experiments, but that allows you to at least hedge your bets and say, you know, it doesn't matter what region of the sky we observe as long as we have X number of galaxies. So that's number one. The second thing you can do is just, you know, and I take this strategy from having written many snapshot proposals for Hubble when it comes to, you know, supernovae observations. If you pick a large enough sample of galaxies that are interesting, you can at least say, well, we don't know what fraction is going to get observed, but we're pretty sure that at least X% will get observed. Where, um, what's X%? Well, that's hard to say, but let's say you want to say, let's say you even say 50% of the wide area survey gets observed. Then you can say, look, even if only 50% gets observed or only 30% gets observed of these select galaxies, I'm still able to do the science that, I want to do. Would it be better to have all the galaxies? Sure. But I can do it with still this fraction of those galaxies. If it does come down to being only a single galaxy that you really, 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 really need, I would probably encourage you to wait for a future cycle until the data are obtained and you can actually start looking at that galaxy to see, what the data look like before you decide to write a proposal on it. So that's just my personal take, but I don't want anyone to go back and say, Ori told me not to write a proposal, so I'm not writing it. I mean, everyone should write proposals, but that's the way I would sort of approach this. Is the rapid pit planning on getting host spectra for non-1A transients? Or will the 1A cosmology group also get host spectra for these transients? So without, I must admit, I'm not as up to speed on the spectroscopy for the time domain survey as I should be, but my understanding is you're going to be getting prism spectroscopy for all the fields all the time. It's going to be happening at the same cadence as all the imaging. And so to produce, as Patrick said, to produce these spectra, they are going to have to create templates from the host galaxies when they do the subtractions. Now, how they publish those spectra or make them publicly available, I'd have to go back and reread some of the release notes, but I'm pretty sure that they will at least exist and they are going to go into the production of the final product for both 1As and non-1As. But here's the catch. Here's the catch. For the non-1A transients, once they know that it's not a 1A, I don't think they are going to do any further processing for future for the rest of the evolution. So I don't think that those will be a public data product, although all that information will likely exist somewhere. It looks like Patrick has his camera on, so maybe he can clarify on that.
I think you're correct in what you're saying. I wanted to clarify it. So the way that it's phrased, just
Yeah.
the rapid pit, just to make sure this is clear, rapid pit is a different pit than the supernova pit. The supernova
Oh,
pit is the one that's producing the host spectra for the non-1A for the 1A transients. The rapid pit is a pit that is developed to create infrastructure to rapidly produce difference images from a lot of the surveys that are going on. And so that's a different, just to make sure everybody's understanding that. So if you go and look for the pit products that look for the supernova pit products that they're producing from the prism spectra for the high latitude time domain survey, the rapid pit is doing image differencing, just to make sure everybody's clear on that part.
yeah.
Did that answer Anya's question though? That's what I want to make sure.
I was gonna say we can also dig in.
Okay, good.
Yeah, so here you go, Anya. The 1A, 1D time series spectra, host galaxy spectral reference. but nothing to do with the non-1As. It's worth pointing out that I'm just reading this again. They will provide their tool that they do use for the spectral extraction. So if that's something you wanted to make use of, for your proposal, you could do that. All right. Anything else? All right. Well, like we said, we will be here again next Tuesday, same time, same link. So if you do have any additional questions, we are here to answer them. And good luck with your final 2 weeks of writing. All right. Bye-bye, everyone. Thank you.
Bye, everyone.